Hello everybody, Riverland here welcoming you to the Stardew Valley Beginners Guide. This will be a series that will be being done to kind of help you get acclimated to Stardew Valley, especially with the new update of the 1.5 update. So when you're starting a new game, the biggest thing that you need to take into consideration is in 1.5, there was an advanced game option added in. Now for first timers, beginners, this section has a lot of information that you could potentially use to change your game to either make it easier or more difficult. So for instance, the community center bundles, you can have it as the normal, which would be basically the ones that were traditional to the game, as well as completable within the first year using the traveling merchant and such to get different portions of it. With the new option, you can actually set that to a remixed version, which modifies what does appear in the community center. You can also click to guarantee that basically you will get the stuff you need. So the other option is there's different rewards for mining. These just basically change a little bit of the game, what kind of rewards you will also get from that. And then there's other things like spawning monsters on the farm at night, the different profit margins. Unfortunately, you cannot go above the normal 100% margin that you would normally get, but you can reduce it if you want. I do not recommend this if you are a new player. Next up, we have the multiplayer options. This is basically if you plan to play with friends or loved ones, you can end up having starting cabins. If you do not, you will have to have those built by Robin. You can also select what kind of layout you want as well. There are seeds that you can set up if you happen to know a game world that seems really good for you. So after that is all out of the way, your character can be created. There is the option in the top left to randomize what you look like. Obviously, your look doesn't really matter in the game. There isn't really any unique dialogue that goes into it, and the clothing can be changed through a variety of means. Your animal preference also is not really that different. Dogs tend to be a little bit louder, barking as they move about the farm, and will tend to just randomly bark when you walk by them. Cats, on the other hand, tend to be a little bit of the lazier side, at least in my experience. There are the option to select your name, your farm name, and then your favorite thing. So favorite things will come up whenever you get star fruit later in the game that increase your stamina. It basically will say something along the lines of you think of your favorite thing. For new people, you can actually enter in the developer's name, and there is a little bit of an Easter egg with that if you would like. You have the option to select male and female. There's a variety of different skins, colors. You can change all of that using the sliders if you need to. As you can see, you can have all different styles, all different looks, anything you really want, and basically whatever. You can also rotate your character if you want to double check to make sure that they look alright in a whole 360 view. Alright, so next off, we have the different farm types. Now, we have your standard farm. This was the farm that was introduced when the game was released. Basically, this is your very starter simple farm. There is a lake in the middle, and it is pretty wide open all around. It's a relatively big farm that allows you to set up everything within the game that you would like. So you'll be able to have barns, you'll be able to have coops, you'll be able to have pretty much everything without running out of space. This is definitely a good one if you're trying to start the game and don't want to be burdened by weird intricacies of the other farm maps. It is definitely recommended in the sense that there isn't anything really blocking your farm as well, which we'll get into in some of the other ones. Now our second one is the Riverland Farm. This farm is kind of difficult to use if you wish to have a lot of different farming and a lot of different animals. Basically, what it is there's a bunch of docks that connect smaller islands. Now, some of the island portions will also be blocked by bigger rocks that will require tools later on down the line, which can basically make it a little bit hard to traverse initially. There also isn't a lot of big islands to have barns and the deluxe barns, so this can make animal caring a little bit more difficult, especially if this is your first time. However, the offset is you can fish and find different varieties of fish that you cannot find on the other farms. You still can find these in other areas of the town and other areas of the forest, but it just makes it a little bit easier if you want to focus on fishing specifically and you like the island aesthetic. It is one of the smaller maps though, unfortunately. Next up, we have probably my favorite farm, which is the forest farm. There's a lot of woods. It's very greenery. There is a lot of places to plant. Initially, this was a horrible one because the grass could not be built on. Now it can actually be built on, so you have a little bit more space. This is also an interesting one because you can find seeds and you can find some of the forageable items of the forest on this farm. These don't naturally occur on other variations of the farm, but in this one they do. There is also a replenishable source of hardwood down in the left corner, which will basically be utilized very heavily in the later game. This adds on to the replenishable hardwood that you can find in one of the secret areas in the game as well. So this is definitely one that late game is very valuable. There aren't too many detractions from this one other than there are a couple of weirdly placed items that might blockade some of your bigger farms, but honestly you can build around that. It's not a huge detriment, and the forest farm is probably one of the better farms, at least in my opinion. Next up, we have the Hilltop Farm. This is a very multi-tiered farm with a river running in the middle of it. It has deposits, mineral deposits in the bottom left, middle leftish, that replenish over time. Unfortunately, the time that it takes to replenish those minerals is very long, and it's not really that valuable. Initially, it helps out, but over time it doesn't. These mineral deposits also level up and rank up based on the level of your tools and your farm. So that's definitely a detriment as well. There are also areas that are blocked off by giant rocks or tree roots that will make this a little bit more difficult to traverse. So overall, this is a difficult farm for the initial starting one. Next up, we have the Wilderness Farm. This was one of the only farms initially that could be used to hunt monsters at night, and as such, monsters will come out at night. This includes a couple of different monsters such as slimes, bats, and leaf/tree-esque people. These, the actual farm itself is relatively big. It does a good job of being similar to the standard farm and being able to spread out, except for a giant lake in the bottom left corner. The one caveat of this farm now is the fact that through the preferences down here, as well as other late game means where you can add monsters to your farm at night, this one is unfortunately doesn't have a uniqueness to it anymore. It's basically, its big thing was having monsters come out, and now with that addition, every farm can have that. So this one doesn't really provide much of anything else. The Four Corners Farm. This is a farm that has rocks and mountain ranges, kind of dividing it up into 4 squares. Each square has a little bit of a difference with certain varieties of water and such, making it easier to use certain squares. This one isn't really good for a single person because, well, you're kind of split up for no reason. It's more developed for a multiplayer game where everyone wants to have their own parcel of land. This one just doesn't really seem to work for a solo experience, so if you are playing solo, I don't recommend this. If you are playing in a group that doesn't want to share, this one is definitely a pretty good one to select. And finally, we have the beach farm, the newest addition to the farms. This was added in the 1.5 release, and it's a good farm. There are forageable items similar to the forest ones. It has a decent amount of space, and you do get the uniqueness of having crates wash up on the beaches. The big difference, though, is the crates aren't spawning very often, so you won't get a ton of stuff initially from these crates and shouldn't rely on that to get stuff. The crates are also determined by the level of your house, which makes it a little bit difficult to expect anything good. Finally, the way it's broken out, it does feel small, so you will end up with a weird setup. The other big thing about this is sprinklers will not work on the sandy soil. So late game, this can become a huge detriment because there isn't much of a grass area to plant a lot of crops. Late game, when you have hundreds of crops, not having the ability to use sprinklers is very detrimental and very annoying. This is definitely a difficult farm to get into and to utilize. It's one of those that I do not recommend for new people trying to get into Stardew Valley. So overall, I would say my personal rank is I believe the forest farm is one of the best, followed by the standard, then probably the wilderness, and then the other ones just kind of slot in wherever. That is my general takeaway. For new people, I definitely think the standard farm's kind of a nice one to just start out with. After you've picked your farm, all that, you can skip the intro if you like. I do not recommend it because it kind of gives you an idea of what the end goal, at least based on what the initial concept of Stardew Valley was. So I would definitely watch the intro if you have not played the game before. But this has been part 1 of the beginner's guide. If you guys want to see a part 2, please let me know down in the comments. And leave a subscribe and leave a like. Until next time, this is Rev Omega saying, I'll catch you later.